Okay, wonderful. All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Kate Blair. I'm the Executive Director of Savannah Chatham CASA. We're gonna there's quite a few of our staff members on here. I'm gonna ask them to do a quick round of introductions so you can just see who they are and what they do. So go ahead, team. You wanna introduce yourselves?
Hey everybody, I'm Mandy Roberts. I'm the Advocacy Program Manager with CASA and I oversee our coordinators.
Hi, my name is Sharon Newman, Advocacy Coordinator, and I specialize in the Independent Living Program, and that's the program for children 14 and over.
I'm Timothy Wright. I'm an Advocacy Coordinator. I oversee the duly involved children that are children who are dependent and have delinquency.
Hi, I'm Maggie Smith. I'm another coordinator. I will be working with a lot of the children that have been trafficked. But thank you so much for being on the call.
Hi, I'm Janae Brown. I'm a new coordinator and I will be working with children who have mental health services.
Teresa, you're muted.
I was going to wait and let Susan go.
Oh, I didn't see Susan.
Is she on here?
No.
Anyway, hey guys, I'm Teresa McBride. I am a volunteer as well as administrative assistant. Glad you guys could join us.
And then we have joining us also is Linda, and Linda is one of our CASA volunteers who's going to talk about her experience. So I'm going to have her talk in just a moment, but I'm going to give you, so you can frame what Linda is going to say with a general overview. So I'm going to play this short video for you all. Let's just hope it all works with technology. Okay, are we ready? We're going to give it a try. Hopefully you can hear it. Well,
growing up is tough.
Ooh. I was too impatient. It started and then I pressed pause. Okay, here we go.
For a kid, they have school and homework, practices and games. There are doctor's appointments and detention halls. The making friends and the keeping friends, discovering who they are and who they aren't. There's so much to learn. There's this whole world out there, right here. These times are transforming in someone's story, and they can really be quite chaotic. That chaos of being a child only increases when abuse and neglect fill their home. The normal winds of chaos are now a storm, and sometimes when the storm is so great, a child must be removed from their home. And this is a really tough day. It's complicated and it's painful. When a child is removed from their home because of abuse or neglect, they leave their normal and they enter foster care. The court sends them to a new place, a new home, often to a new school with new people, everything. And all of these new things aim at a better life for the child. They aim to help in the healing process for the family.
Or not. All right. Well, technology. So I have no idea what just happened there. Zero idea what just happened. The screen just went blank. So anyway, the basic premise of the movie, which I will send to the little video that I'll send to you all, I'll link it and email it to you all when we follow up on this, is that a CASA volunteer is there through the darkest moments of children's lives as children enter foster care, and they make sure that a child receives all the services that they need to be successful. They advocate for them in the school system, with their health, with their mental health, but most importantly in the courtroom. So I'm going to then, let me go ahead and highlight Linda, who's going to talk about her experience as a CASA volunteer and what that has meant to her. And I'm going to spotlight so y'all can see her.
Hey, everybody. I'm Linda Johnson. I've been a CASA volunteer for approximately a little over a year. I have 3 children that have been assigned to me. I have a little boy who's 9. He has a brother who's 2. And then we just recently have a newborn that was added to the mix. I have always been interested in CASA, and I've been looking at it for a number of years, but I wasn't in a position for much of that time to be able to look any further than just be interested in it because you know, of the time commitment that's involved. But my son has when he got his driver's license and was able to get around on his own, then that's when I revisited it and decided to look into it further. I've really enjoyed being a CASA volunteer. I didn't really know what it was going to be about. I like the idea of being able to advocate for children. My case in particular is pretty complicated because it started out with 2 and they traveled over or got placed in South Carolina with a relative. And now we have a baby in the mix. So we had Georgia and South Carolina, and now we have a baby in the mix who was born in Liberty County. So we have Chatham County, Liberty County, Georgia, and South Carolina. So it's gotten kind of complicated. But the really important part about being the CASA is that you are pretty much, you are in contact with the most amount of people that are involved and connected to the case. So you really do become the glue that holds everything together. You are the one who shares information with other people. And you, because you have contact with so many different people, you are, you know where the problems lie, and you know what needs to be addressed. And then you also have the opportunity to be in contact with the people who can fix the things that are wrong. I think probably one of the most surprising things to me coming in as a CASA is you assume that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and what you quickly will find out is not everybody is always doing what they're supposed to be doing. And as a CASA volunteer, you're going to be identifying the things that aren't getting done. So it's a really important part to the puzzle. And it's more important that, I mean, it's very important that the kids have somebody who is advocating for them and who knows all of the different aspects and ins and outs of what their situation is like. I tell you that my 9-year-old I've become very attached to. He looks forward to my visits. He looks forward to our conversations. And it's really cool to be a part of making his situation a little bit better. I just have really enjoyed being a CASA volunteer. It's been an eye-opening experience for me. And the really cool thing is that the courts, they want to hear what you have to say. So you feel like you're really making a difference and you're really advocating for the kids. And that's probably, you know, the coolest thing about it. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything like that, or if anybody wants to know anything else. This is my first time speaking in front of a group about CASA, so.
You did a great job. No, I think, and she does have a very complicated case. And so when you're working across jurisdictions in particular, that one constant between the different jurisdictions makes that such a huge impact in keeping a family together. And Linda in particular has been a voice for the parents as well, and ensuring that familial connections are retained, which can often get lost in the system, ensuring that, you know, the baby gets to see their parents and, you know, things of that nature. So does anybody have any questions for Linda before we let her go so she doesn't have to listen to all the stuff she learned already? Okay. All right, thank you so much, Linda. We really, really.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me and asking me to join.
Oh, yes. Of course.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint here. So currently in Chatham County, we have 387 children in foster care, and we at Savannah Chatham CASA are serving about 65%, which is wonderful given about a year and a half ago we were serving less than 40%. So we're growing quite quickly, but we need more volunteers just like you to ensure that every single child has an advocate. As you heard Linda reference, children in foster care are just kind of shuffled around by the system. And CASA was founded because they acknowledged that not everybody's always doing what they're supposed to do, whether that's, just general incompetence, which we run into lesser than really just each individual that's part of the system being overwhelmed by the system and not being able to give the care and attention to the children that they deserve because the system just is broken. It doesn't operate the way that it should. So we want to make sure that every one of these children have an opportunity. Come on, internet. There we go. So we love this quote it says, can be no keener revelation for a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. And we really do adhere to this, that Chatham County can be seen what the soul of Chatham County is based on how our children here in Chatham County are treated. And nothing truer than children in foster care who are the most vulnerable, who've experienced neglect and abuse. How are they being treated? How are we ensuring that they have what they need? So a CASA, which stands for a court-appointed special advocate, is appointed by the Chatham County Juvenile Court to advocate for the best interests of children who experience abuse or neglect. So every child that is a dependent case, as you heard maybe Tim mention when he talked about a child that had dependency or delinquency. So juvenile court deals with two things, dependency and delinquency. Dependency is when they've been removed from home due to abuse or neglect, or they may be in home and have court oversight to ensure that the child is not further neglected or abused. And then there's delinquent, which is when a child does something that's against the law, right? So we work with the children that we work with have an open case with DFACS, meaning, and they are in foster care. Some of our children may be still living with their families, but most of them are in foster care, either with a family placement or a foster family. So when we say advocate for the best interest, every child has an attorney and every child has a DFACS case manager. And DFACS, if you're not aware, stands for Department of Family Children's Services. And so they have both a caseworker and an attorney, but they also, under the juvenile code, are also given a guardian ad litem. And that can either be an attorney or that will be a CASA volunteer. And so a guardian ad litem, which is what makes them different than a child's attorney, is that we advocate for the best interest, not necessarily what the child wants. If you've ever had children, you know that those two things always match up, right? My son probably wants ice cream for dinner tonight, but that's not in his best interest, so he'll get actual food for dinner, right? And that's especially tricky when what a child want may be to return home to mom or dad, and mom or dad may not be a safe environment for them. The child, of course, loves their mom or dad and want to return to them, but we have to decide and present to the court what we think is in the child's best interest and to prevent them from experiencing further trauma. So a CASA volunteer spends time monthly with their assigned children. So every CASA volunteer will be assigned a case. That could be one child or multiple children. Some CASA volunteers have more than one case if they have the capacity to do that, but most have one. When they are assigned to a child's case, they are sworn in by the court and then given a court order that's appointed to that particular case, which means they can have access to all the child's records. So they can go to the doctor's office, the school, and people have to talk to them as if this was their own child because they have a court order mandating that. The CASA volunteer speaks with teachers, family members, counselors, caseworkers, medical professionals, foster parents, everybody in the child's life, because what we believe is that each one of these children deserve to have somebody fighting for them and ensuring that all of their needs are met in the same way that any one of us would want someone to fight for them or to fight for their own children. And why there is this, in addition to a case manager or an attorney, and what makes a CASA volunteer so unique is that case managers can have upwards of 30 to 40 cases each. And And attorneys can have even more than that. And a CASA volunteer, as I said, has one case. And when you're visiting one family, one child or sibling group, you have a lot more capacity to find out what's going on than you do when you are a case manager having to go to 30 different homes each month and talk to 30 different counselors or 30 different school teachers. And both Sharon and Mandy, who are part of our team, have both worked for DFACS and can tell you that it is an impossible task that is put upon case managers, and it's what makes a CASA volunteer so important and unique. And oftentimes our attorneys and our case managers rely on CASA volunteers to provide them with quick, up-to-date information that they may not know. And so we evaluate all areas of the child's life to ensure that their needs are being met educationally, emotionally, psychologically, and physically. Why do children need a CASA? Well, we found, all research has shown that children with a CASA, with someone fighting for them in addition to their attorney and case manager, that they're twice as likely to have a safe or permanent home. And often, one of the main misconceptions about children in foster care is that that result is adoption. More than half of the children that enter foster care will be reunified with their parents. They might have come into care because of many different issues. We see a lot of mental health and substance use issues. Those are things that can be fixed. Those are things that can be addressed, right? That they can get the help that they need to then live a healthy and successful life and care for their children. And so only a small percentage, about 10% of children, 10 to 15% of children that come into foster care experience physical or sexual abuse. Most are experiencing neglect as a result of other issues. So we are huge advocates, not just for the child, but often for the family. Sometimes we're the ones also fighting so that the parents can get the resources they need. And while a child doesn't come into foster care because of poverty, a child will stay in foster care because of poverty. If the parents cannot find housing or they can't meet all of the things that they need. And so often we're trying to connect those families with the resources, because the least amount of time a child spends in foster care, the better. Not only does it open up a foster home for other children that might need it, but it brings that child back to the family that loves them and ensures that they can have that relationship and not lose time. Children with a CASA are half as likely to re-enter foster care. They're more likely to succeed in school because somebody's checking and making sure they're going to school and doing schoolwork. Because it's a lot to ask even of foster families, or often it might be an aunt or a fictive kin, which is, like your mom's best friend that might be raising them, who aren't necessarily trained foster parents, but but people that chose to care for these children that get some training from DFACS, but this is not they have a whole bunch of other things going on in their life, and so they may not have the capacity to do that for the child. And all of the families receive more services to address the family's needs because they're being connected by the CASA volunteer, and a child is less likely to be moved from foster home to foster home. Foster care is not in and of itself traumatic to a child. Being removed from their home causes trauma, right? And whatever experiences that required a child to leave their home, that's the trauma that a child endures. But foster care, if a child is moved from their home to a very healthy foster care environment, we won't further traumatize the child. However, if we continue to move the child and break the relationships that they develop while in foster care, we can cause more trauma, which is why it's really important that we keep the child connected as much as possible to. And just really one great thing about CASA is that we save taxpayers a lot of money. When there isn't a CASA volunteer, that means a guardian ad litem attorney has to be assigned to the case, which requires tax dollars to pay for that attorney. We're CASA volunteers, and while we do get funding from the government, we can take that money and we can do a lot more with it, and using volunteers. And really, when you tell a family or a child that you're in this because you're passionate and you care about them and you want to make a difference in their life, it means a lot more than someone that's being paid to do it. It means that there's somebody that cares about me, that is not being forced by their boss to care about me. That really is incredibly meaningful. All right, and then the questions about becoming a CASA. that is all. One of the biggest questions we get is, what is the time commitment of a CASA volunteer? We already a little bit got that in the beginning, right? Is it possible to have a full-time job or do other things and be a CASA volunteer? So the biggest time commitment that you would have as a CASA volunteer is upfront in the training. So training is 30 hours of in-class training, which now in-class means like this, right? During COVID, it's via Zoom. Right now, we're in the middle of a class that is occurring on Thursday nights for 3 hours, but our next class starts October 3rd on a Saturday. It'll be a Saturday class from 9 to 12 for 6 weeks. And so that's the biggest time commitment. In addition to that time you spend in class, you also have online training during it, where you'll be basically, if you've ever taken like an online course or anything, there's a separate kind of, it's called a Moodle room, where you interact with your teammates, your classmates, and talk to them about and provide input on the different cases or things like that. And so it's additional online learning. So it's part online, part online. It says part online in person, but you get it part on. Okay, nobody thinks I'm funny. I can't hear you all anyway. I'll just pretend like I'm hilarious. So anyway, it's 30 hours of that, but then 10 hours of in-court training. So that means you'll do court observation. Currently, our court is virtual as well. So even that is not in person. Court hearings do happen during the day. This can be the trickiest part for CASA volunteers that have a full-time job. So you have to be a little little creative. So we have court that's usually occurring from 9 to 5 at different times, and our coordinators will provide you a list and you sign up and you observe. So you'd want to take your lunch break, a long lunch break, or take off an afternoon, but you need to get 10 hours within the about 7 weeks worth of training. So it's not impossible. We've had lots of people do it. We've had teachers that have to be at the school, but then will come right after school and catch the last couple hearings. And a lot of people who just rarely take a whole day off, take a day with the most court hearings, take the day off and get as much court in that day as possible. So you can, if you have more questions about how that might work with your schedule, you can reach out to us individually and we can help you with that. But once you become a CASA volunteer, you will know about court hearings typically 6 months in advance. So you'll have 6 months to plan to make sure you have that time off. And often court is once every 6 months. It can be more often than that. And it can be, you can find out about it a little earlier or with less times occasionally if there's an emergency that comes up. But staff, is there anything that you would add about that, about the training portion that I missed?
I think you covered it all.
Okay. And so the other part of becoming a CASA volunteer is that you, you will complete an application. If you have not already done so, after this, tomorrow morning, you'll get an email with the link to the application. For those of you coming in later, it'll also have a link to this video recording so you can catch the first part of this. And there'll be, so you'll fill out the application. After you fill out the application, someone will reach out to you, Teresa, lovely Teresa, who's on this call, to set up an interview with Holland, who will conduct your interview. You'll need to provide 3 references, and it'll send a link to your references so that they can complete that. We also have to do fingerprints, criminal history search, sex offender, all this stuff to basically ensure that you have nothing on your record that would make you unable to work with children. So we're really looking for anything that has to do negatively with children or any negative interactions with DFACS that would prevent you from being it. Other small or minor offenses or things, that's not a concern for us, but just that there's nothing on your record have to do with children. So once you complete all of the background check and you complete all of that training, then you are sworn in by a judge. And this is always a great opportunity you'll get to meet the judges. Hopefully for this next class, maybe it'll be in person. If not, it'll be virtual, but we'll set up a meet and greet with judges at a later date. And we have the most supportive judges in the state of Georgia, I think probably in the country. We are one of the only CASA programs in Georgia that all of our judges show up, and not only show up for the swearing because they're so excited, but they do pictures and they get to know everybody. They are so supportive of us. I was in a meeting with them this morning, and they just talk about how it's CASA volunteers that make them feel more confident in their decisions, because it's CASAs that know more of what's going on than any other person in that courtroom. And for that reason, they really value what we provide. And it's in the courtroom that the rubber meets the road of everything you do. You know, it can be discouraging because the judge may not always agree with you, right? And we all come to the table with our own ideas and our own bias and our own lived experience that may think that there should be a different conclusion than there is. But we know, we can rest assured that we give the judge all the information that they need to be able to make the right decision for this child. And oftentimes they agree with us, but sometimes they don't, because they know the law a lot better than we do. And I think that is it. So after you finish your training, the typical amount of time that you would spend as a CASA volunteer, we usually say is about 15 hours a month. You visit your child monthly. That is based on your schedule. So the only thing that's really about that is not movable are those court hearings, right? We don't set the court schedule, but you'll get to decide, you know, you're the one that can decide on your own time when you can reach out to counselors and teachers, and when you can visit the child based on what the foster parent says. And so it's really up to your own schedule and how you work that. In the beginning of a case, you're going to spend more time than you will as the case progresses, because you have to learn everything you can about that child and who the major players are, and who you think might be the right home or the right plan, permanency plan, if the child should be reunified or if the child should be adopted or guardianship, or all the different options, which you'll learn all of that in training. And so that's the beginning part of it all, you will spend a lot more time working on it. Staff, do you want to add anything before we go into questions? There's always a lot of questions, but you usually know them. So any staff members? And welcome, Susan. We had another staff member join us, Susan.
I'm late.
No, sorry. And Susan is over our family treatment court. So she works with families who have substance use disorders. So any families that choose to participate in this high intensive court, where they are they are drug tested once a week, right?
It's usually up to 3 times a week.
Wow. And they go to court, then they go to court, and there's regular staffings, and it's very high intensity. But it's beautiful when our families make it through the court and are reunified with their families and heal and parent sober for the very first time and really get to bond and develop with their children. It's a very amazing and beautiful thing. And that is, if that's something that's of interest to you. As you heard everybody kind of talk about their specialty, we have different courts that are a little more intensive. So we have Susan's, which is family treatment, which is every week. So you have to provide more often updates. And then we have what is going to be called the Hope Court, which will be starting next year, which is for children that have been commercially trafficked. And that will also be similar to family treatment court and have weekly staffings as well. But staff, do you have anything you want to add about what it takes to be a CASA volunteer and what we're looking for, anything like that? We've heard a lot of my voice. No? Okay. So questions. Anybody have, I know y'all have questions. Everybody always has questions.
Hi, my name is Deja, and my question is, how does visiting the child work with COVID?
I'm going to let one of the staff take it since you've heard so much from me. They all know the answer. So who wants to do it?
I'll take it. Very good question. Actually, during COVID, we did suspend visits between CASA and the children, just as a safety concern, and we don't want to be a part of spreading anything. So visits actually, as of earlier, or today's Tuesday, so as of last week, we are allowing in-person visits, but we are ensuring that our volunteers are following the CDC protocols. So making sure that nobody's been in contact with anybody with COVID, making sure that they wear their face mask, and of course social distance, like stay the 6 feet apart. So we are allowing in-person visits again if the volunteer and the placement are comfortable with that. But during this time when the in-person visits were suspended, our volunteers were doing a lot of Zoom calls or FaceTime, phone calls, things like that. Really getting creative actually with how they can interact with their kids. So.
Yes. And I do also, that made me think of another part of the spiel that I left off. So as I said, we have over 350 children in foster care, and about half of them are not placed in Chatham County. So all of our children are Chatham County children. They all go to court at the juvenile court, which is off of Chatham Parkway near the Sheriff's Department. That's where they go to court. That's always where you go to court. I shouldn't say always, because Linda has a case that there's a couple here and there that might be at a neighboring court, and we look for CASAs that might be willing to do that. But 99.9% of the time you're at Chatham County. Unfortunately, our children get placed across the state. And so what we're really looking for, and what we need more than anything, are CASA volunteers willing to travel. They're all within the state. I shouldn't say that. Teresa has a child placed out of state, but there's always exceptions to every rule. But 99.9% of the time, only the 2 volunteers that just happen to be on here have special cases. They're in the state of Georgia, and we're looking for people that are able to travel. Now, if a child is placed 2 hours or more away, you won't be required to physically visit them every month, because we know that that's almost impossible with a lot of people's work schedules. So you'll do virtual visits in those off months. But we are really looking for people that are able and willing to travel. If you have family or your job takes you to a certain part of Georgia, that's really good information for us to know, because if we can find a child that's placed near that, then you'll be more likely to be able to visit them more regularly than any other CASA volunteer would be able to. So that is definitely, right now, we are in desperate need of people that are willing to travel, especially the kids that are usually placed furthest away are older youth and youth with behavioral issues, youth that are dually involved, that might either be sexually trafficked, and so we're removing them from their environment, or they have behavioral issues, so they need to be in a home that can handle that kind of kids responding to their trauma in that way. And so we're really looking for people that are willing to, that have a heart for that population, that want to help these young people, that if someone doesn't intervene, their path is not going to be a good one. And so we're looking for folks that will be willing to do that. But if you aren't able to travel at all, and then you might just be waiting a much longer for a case, because we can only give you cases that are within Chatham County. The further you're able to travel, or the more open you are at your cases. We already have some in this next class that haven't even graduated yet, and we're waiting for them to finish so that we can assign them cases. So, any other questions?
Hi, Kate.
Hi, I saw your name on there. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Good to see you. I have a quick question, and I may have missed it because, as you can see, I'm at work. So I was doing some things and listening at the same time. So are we required to keep case notes? Is there a database?
Yes.
Okay.
Great question. So we have a called Optima, and it's specially made for CASA programs. And so it has where we call them logs. So as you meet with the child or family members or doing that, you enter a log into the system. It's really user friendly. You can do it on your phone. You can even do a talk to text with it. And that's how we report on our grants, and also can you use that information for the courts. And actually one of our judges today was just saying that his favorite part about our court reports is that in them he can see how often our CASA volunteer is talking with these people, because we actually put the dates in it.
Right.
That he never gets that from an attorney. So yeah, so we have that, and that's how we track how much time. And then also, if you put your travel in, you can use that for your taxes. It'll track it as well. So you can either write that off in your taxes, or we do it for those that travel far, we do reimburse to a certain amount
Mhm.
for people that travel. So.
Okay. So outside of Chatham County, where would you say your greatest need is as far as counties are concerned?
That's a great question. Staff would know way better than I would. Any of you have any guesses? Where do we struggle the most to?
We probably struggle the most, like going towards Columbus,
Mm.
the Columbus area,
Yeah.
Okay.
Rome,
Whoa.
and Atlanta.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
Atlanta has more child serving institutions, you know, for children that have very severe needs. Like we just don't have a lot of resources here. So if you think about a larger city like Atlanta, that's going to
Right.
be a place that some of our children have to go to receive the right kind of treatment.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we
Okay.
always like to say in these informational sessions, if you're considering becoming a foster parent, stop. Don't become a CASA, become a foster parent, because we need more foster parents than we need anything else. But quite a few of our CASA volunteers will test it out and become a CASA volunteer. And see, maybe if they see how the system works and when they're a little more comfortable, then become a foster parent.
Right. Okay. Okay. I think those are all the questions I have. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else? So as I mentioned, we will send out, following this, I'll send out an email with the video that didn't want to cooperate, the recording of this for anybody that might have come in late, and the application. And once you fill that out, I think there are some on here that have already done the application, and Teresa will set up the interview with you as well. And so we can move forward, and we hope, again, our next training, and it's our last training in the year, will start on October 3rd on a Saturday. This is our first time trying to do it on a Saturday, seeing if we can catch people that struggle a little bit or a little bit more, or just, I mean, we're all doing so many Zooms. So we thought maybe one day where you haven't spent 8 hours on Zoom, you won't, you'll feel a little more refreshed. So we're going to give that a try. Otherwise, our next training will be after the new year. So, all right. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye.
You too.